Phillip Garrido was born on April 5, 1951 in Pittsburgh, California. He was a normal kid until he had a serious motorcycle accident as a teenager. After that, everything changed. He started using drugs, crystal meth, LSD. His brother said he became a fruitcake. In 1972, Garrido was arrested for harming a 14-year-old girl. The charges were dropped when she refused to testify. In 1976, he did it again, this time to a 25-year-old casino worker in Nevada named Catherine Calloway. He kept her prisoner for 5 hours. He harmed her repeatedly. He was caught and sent to prison. He served 11 years. He should have stayed there for life, but they let him out, and that was a mistake. On June 10, 1991, Garrido and his wife Nancy were driving through South Lake Tahoe, California, looking for someone. They saw 11-year-old J.C. Dugard walking to her school bus stop. It was just a few yards from her house. Her stepfather, Carl Probin, had just dropped her off. Garrido pulled up in his car. Nancy got out. They grabbed J.C. and pulled her inside. Probin saw it happen. He tried to chase them on his bicycle, but they drove away too fast. Authorities searched everywhere. The FBI got involved, but they had no leads. J.C. disappeared without a trace. Garrido took J.C. to his house in Antioch, California. It was 170 miles away. He kept her in a shack in his backyard. He told her to call herself Alyssa. He told her lies to keep her from trying to escape. He said her family didn't want her anymore. He said they stopped looking for her. He harmed her repeatedly. J.C. was locked in that shed for the first year and a half. She didn't leave the backyard for 4 years. When she was 14, Garrido impregnated her. She gave birth to a daughter. When she was 17, he impregnated her again. She had another daughter. The girls were raised to call Garrido and Nancy mom and dad. They thought J.C. was their older sister. For 18 years, J.C. lived in tents, sheds, and lean-tos hidden behind Garrido's house. Neighbors had no idea she was there. Garrido was on federal parole. His parole officer visited the house multiple times. They never found her. In 2006, a neighbor told authorities that Garrido was living with small children. Nothing happened. The parole agent said electronic monitoring would be too much of a hassle. The system failed J.C. over and over. Garrido was supposed to be under intensive supervision. He was a registered offender, but somehow he kept J.C. and her 2 daughters hidden for nearly 2 decades. On August 24, 2009, Garrido went to the University of California, Berkeley campus. He brought J.C.'s 2 daughters with him. They were 11 and 15 years old. He wanted a permit to hand out religious flyers. A campus police officer named Ally Jacobs became suspicious. She ran a background check. She learned Garrido was a registered offender. She called his parole officer. The parole officer was shocked. Garrido wasn't supposed to have children. On August 26, 2009, the parole officer ordered Garrido to come to his office. Garrido brought Nancy, J.C., and the 2 girls. J.C. still called herself Alyssa. She defended Garrido. She said he was a changed man. She said he was good with her kids. But when the parole officer kept pressing, Garrido finally admitted the truth. He said he kidnapped and harmed J.C. when she was a child. Only then did J.C. identify herself. She was 29 years old. She had been gone for 18 years. On April 28, 2011, Phillip and Nancy Garrido pleaded guilty. Phillip was charged with kidnapping and 13 counts of assault. On June 2, 2011, the judge sentenced Phillip to 431 years to life in prison. Nancy got 36 years to life. J.C. read a statement in court. She said they stole her life. She said she hated every second of every day for 18 years. She said there is no God in the universe that would condone their actions. She told Phillip he did not matter anymore. Phillip is now at Corcoran State Prison. Nancy is at California Institution for Women. She becomes eligible for parole in August 2029. J.C. got custody of her daughters. She moved in with her mother. She wrote 2 books about her experience. She started the JC Foundation to help families dealing with loss. JC survived, but she lost her childhood. She lost 18 years of her life because PHILLIP GARRIDO was let out of prison when he should have stayed there forever. Dana James Ewell was born on January 28, 1971 in Fresno, California. He grew up with everything. His father Dale Ewell was a multimillionaire businessman who owned Western Piper Sales Inc. He sold small airplanes. His mother Glee Ewell was a teacher and civic activist who once worked as a Spanish translator for the CIA. His sister Tiffany was a graduate student. The family was worth about $8 million. Dana went to private schools. He drove a gold Mercedes-Benz. He wore expensive Armani clothes. He had expensive taste, but he wanted more. He was obsessed with money. He lied constantly. He told people he owned a company that made millions. He told people he was a stockbroker at 18. None of it was true. Dana had an IQ of 180. He was smart, but he used his intelligence for evil. On Easter Sunday, April 19, 1992, the Ewell family spent the weekend at their beach house in Pajaro Dunes near Watsonville, California. On Sunday, Glee and Tiffany drove back to Fresno in their car. Dale flew back separately in his airplane. Dana stayed at the beach with his girlfriend and her family. Her father, John Zent, was an FBI agent. Dana had the perfect alibi. He was 200 miles away. When Glee and Tiffany arrived home around 3 in the afternoon, someone was waiting inside. The perpetrator discharged a firearm. Glee was hit multiple times. Tiffany was hit in the head. About 30 minutes later, Dale walked through the door. The perpetrator discharged the firearm again. Dale went down. All 3 were deceased. The house looked ransacked. It looked like a burglary. But Detective John Souza knew better. The scene was staged, too clean, too perfect. The perpetrator had stood on plastic sheeting to avoid leaving evidence. No DNA, no fingerprints, no shoe prints, nothing. 2 days later, the housekeeper Johnita Avenita found the bodies. Authorities contacted Dana immediately. He flew back to Fresno. He seemed shaken, but something was off. He wasn't emotional enough. He seemed more interested in his parents' will than their deaths. Extended family members said Dana became fixated on the estate details. He was visibly angry when he learned he couldn't access most of the money until he turned 30. His parents had set up a legal trust. Dana would get some money at 25, half the principal at 30, the rest at 35, but he did get $300,000 in life insurance right away. He also became executor of his grandmother's $400,000 trust account. Within 3 years, that account dropped to less than $2,000. Dana spent it all. Investigators focused on Dana even though he had an alibi. They learned about his college friend Joel Redovicic. The two were called the odd couple. Dana was polished and wealthy looking. Joel was a slacker skater type. Joel dropped out of college right after the incidents. That was suspicious. Authorities watched them for years. They saw Dana giving Joel cash payments, hundreds, sometimes thousands. They saw Joel taking flying lessons paid for by Dana. They saw trips to Mexico, all funded by the Ewell estate. Then authorities learned that Dana had given money to Joel, who gave it to a man named Jack Ponce. Ponce bought a 9mm firearm, the same type used in the incidents. But the weapon was missing. Investigators bought a replica firearm. They found a hitman instruction book that belonged to Joel. The book explained how to build a silencer using tennis balls. Authorities built one following the instructions. Suddenly, the yellow-green fibers found in the bullets in Glee's body made sense. It matched the tennis ball silencer. In March 1995, nearly 3 years after the incidents, authorities arrested Dana and Joel. Dana turned himself in when he learned they were looking for him. The trial was sensational. Jack Ponce testified for the prosecution. He explained the weapon purchase. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed Dana's obsession with money. Witnesses described his lies and manipulation. Joel was tried on 3 counts of first-degree offense. In 1998, both men were convicted. Dana was sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Joel received the same. Dana is now at California State Prison Corcoran in the Protective Housing Unit. He is 53 years old. He writes letters claiming he found Christianity in prison. He says he is grateful he came to prison where he realized how lost and depraved he had become. Investigators call him a master manipulator. Even now they wonder if his religious conversion is real or just another lie. Dale Gully and Tiffany Ewell came home from a nice family weekend. They were shot and taken from life because Dana couldn't wait to inherit their money. He caused their deaths for an inheritance he couldn't even access for years. 3 people passed away because of greed. Horace Van Vaultz Jr. was born on May 21, 1955. He lived a double life for decades in Southern California. On the surface, he seemed normal. He had wives and girlfriends. He worked regular jobs. He moved around California, living in different cities. But underneath that normal appearance was a predator who harmed and took the lives of young women. He did it for years and nobody caught him. He thought he got away with it. For more than 30 years he was free while families wondered what happened to their daughters. On July 16, 1981, 21-year-old Selena Keogh disappeared in Montclair in San Bernardino County. She was a young mother. Her body was found under bushes near an apartment building. She had been harmed and strangled. Authorities collected evidence, but had no suspects. The case went cold. 5 years later, on June 9, 1986, 22-year-old Mary Duggan from Reseda disappeared. Her body was found in the trunk of her car in a parking lot in Burbank. She had been harmed and asphyxiated. Authorities knew the 2 cases were connected. The same person was responsible. DNA from both scenes matched, but they had no idea who it belonged to. Vaultz had been arrested once before in 1984 in Huntington Beach for harming and attempting to strangle a 22-year-old woman. He was convicted and sent to prison, but his offenses happened before DNA databases existed. When he got out, he wasn't in the system. In 1987, he was arrested for another incident. 25-year-old Jana Kathleen Rowe from Newbury Park was found strangled near the Ventura River on December 27, 1986. Vaultz claimed he was friends with Rowe. He said he last saw her at a motel the day before her death. He gave an alibi. He said he was in Los Angeles when she passed away, but he lied. He had actually checked in and out of the motel around the time of her death. He went to trial in January 1988. The jury acquitted him. DNA testing wasn't available yet. Vaultz walked free again. For more than 30 years, Vaultz lived his life. He got married. He moved to Bakersfield. He kept a collection of photographs in his house. Dozens of pictures of young women and teenage girls. Some were posed. Some looked candid. Authorities believe some of those women may have been harmed or taken from life, but they can't prove it. 2 of the women in the photos have been identified. They are alive and well, but many others remain unknown. In 2019, everything changed. Investigators used investigative genetic genealogy. They uploaded DNA from the incidents to commercial genealogy websites. They found distant relatives of the perpetrator. They narrowed it down. They zeroed in on Vaultz. On November 14, 2019, authorities arrested him during a traffic stop in ING Leawood. They had been watching him. They collected DNA from his trash. It matched the DNA from both Keogh and Duggan. It was an exact match. Vaultz became the first person in Los Angeles County arrested using this new technology. The trial began in August 2022. Vaultz testified in his own defense. He admitted he was a swinger. He said he had consensual encounters with hundreds of partners. He claimed he didn't remember Keogh or Duggan. He said someone else took their lives after he was with them. The defense admitted the DNA was strong, but they said DNA doesn't prove he caused their deaths. The prosecution called him a sexually motivated serial offender. They presented overwhelming evidence: DNA on the bodies, DNA on a ski mask worn during one incident, DNA on both individuals affected. A shoe print at one scene matched shoes belonging to Vaultz. They also presented evidence about Rowe, even though she wasn't part of the charges. They showed Rowe's jewelry was found among Vaultz's mother's belongings. They showed DNA evidence linking him to Rowe. On August 18, 2022, after 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Vaultz guilty of 2 counts of first-degree offense with special circumstances. Multiple offenses, offense during harm. On September 19, 2022, the judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Vaultz is now 67 years old. He is at California State Prison. He maintains he is innocent, but the evidence says otherwise. Selena Keogh and Mary Duggan were young women with their whole lives ahead of them. They were harmed and taken from life by a predator who thought he would never be caught. It took more than 30 years, but justice finally came. Scott Edgar Dileski was born on October 30, 1988 in San Francisco, California. His parents separated when he was 2 years old. His mother raised him. He dropped out of high school at 16. He lived in the rural Hunsaker Canyon area near Lafayette, California. He smoked marijuana. He got into credit card fraud with friends. He was a troubled kid with dark thoughts. He told his girlfriend Jana Reddy that he thought about beating and breaking the necks of children. He was curious about how the human body would function without certain organs. She should have told someone, but she didn't. In October 2005, Scott and his friend Robin Crone planned to grow marijuana in Scott's closet. They needed money to buy lighting equipment. Scott stole credit card information from neighbors. On October 13, 2005, he placed orders for hydroponic equipment. But he made a mistake. He used credit card information for Karen Schneider but accidentally used Pamela Vital's address for billing and his own address for shipping. Pamela Vital lived across from him. She was 52 years old. She was married to prominent defense attorney Daniel Horowitz. The lighting company refused to process the order. They suspected fraud. Scott told Crone he would take care of it. He called the credit card company to try again. It didn't work. On October 15, 2005, Pamela was home alone. She was renovating the house she shared with her husband. Scott put on a dark mask and gloves. He armed himself with a rock and a weapon. He went to Pamela's house. Authorities believe he was going to burglarize the home. But Pamela was there. She surprised him. What happened next was brutal. Scott attacked Pamela. He hit her with the rock over and over. She tried to fight him off. She fought hard, but Scott was young and strong. He rained blow after blow on her head. Pamela fell to the ground. Even when she was motionless and near death, Scott wasn't done. He put the rock away. He pulled out his weapon. He pulled her shirt up and carved a symbol on her back. Then he turned her over and stabbed deep into her midsection. He left a gaping wound in her abdomen. Pamela was bludgeoned at least 26 times. She was eviscerated. She passed away in her entryway just inside the front door. Daniel Horowitz came home that evening. He found his wife's body. He was devastated. 5 days later, on October 20, 2005, authorities arrested Scott. The evidence against him was overwhelming. A bloody Fantasia soda can at the scene matched one from his home. Fibers from his clothing were on Pamela's body. Pamela's blood was found on Scott's belongings. A duffel bag with his name tag contained a blood-stained rubber glove, ski mask and sweater. All had Pamela's blood on them. Scott's DNA was on the ski mask's mouth area. The odds of it being someone else were 1 in 780 trillion for Caucasians. A bloody shoe print on a plastic bin lid at the scene matched Land's End shoes belonging to Scott. Pamela's blood was on one of his shoes. DNA from Pamela's right foot matched Scott. 17 out of 17 markers matched. The trial began in August 2006. Scott pleaded not guilty. He did not testify. He maintained his innocence. His girlfriend Jana testified that Scott told her he would take the blame to protect her and his best friend. But she also said he talked about violence and was curious about harming people. The prosecution portrayed Scott as a troubled teen who glorified violence and took pleasure in causing death. They presented all the physical evidence. The defense argued it was all circumstantial. They said there were no eyewitnesses, no confession. But the evidence spoke for itself. On August 28, 2006, after 18 hours of deliberation over 4 days, the jury found Scott guilty of first-degree offense. The jury also found the special circumstance that the offense occurred during a burglary. Scott was 16 at the time of the incident. He was 17 when convicted. He did not qualify for the death penalty because he was a juvenile. On September 26, 2006, Judge Barbara Zuniga sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Scott became the youngest inmate in the California prison system when he was transferred to San Quentin Prison on his 18th birthday. In 2018, Scott's sentence was reduced to 25 years to life after California passed Senate Bill 394. This law gives juveniles tried as adults and sentenced to life without parole a chance for eventual freedom. Scott will be eligible for parole in 2030. He is now 36 years old. He is at California State Prison Corcoran. He still maintains his innocence. A private investigator hired by his appeals attorneys claims evidence shows Pamela's offense was personal. They claim someone else did it. But courts have rejected all his appeals. The evidence against him remains strong. Pamela Vidal was renovating her dream home. She wanted it to be a gathering place for generations. She wanted to spend holidays there forever. Scott took that away from her. He took her life during a burglary to cover up credit card fraud. Her family will never heal. ISAURO Aguirre was born in 1980. He worked as a security guard in Palmdale, California. He worked for Ewell private security starting in October 2012. He worked at Vallarta Market. Before that, he worked as a caregiver and driver at Woodland Park Retirement Hotel. He seemed like a normal guy. But in 2012 he started dating Pearl Fernandez. She had 4 children. One of them was 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez. Gabriel had been raised by his great-uncle and his partner since he was born. But in June 2012 Pearl got custody back. She wanted the welfare money. Gabriel moved in with her. What happened next was 8 months of pure evil. Gabriel believed Gabriel was gay. He hated that. He decided to punish Gabriel for it. Pearl went along with everything. They beat Gabriel every single day. They shot him with BB guns. They made him eat cat feces and spoiled food. They forced him to eat his own vomit. They put out cigarettes on his skin. They burned him with heated objects. They made him sleep bound and gagged in a cabinet. They made him wear girls' clothing to humiliate him. They laughed while they did it. Gabriel's siblings saw everything. They said Aguirre and Pearl enjoyed it. They thought it was funny. Gabriel's teacher Jennifer Garcia noticed bruises and injuries. She reported it to child welfare. A social worker was assigned. But the social worker didn't do enough. Garcia kept seeing worse and worse injuries on Gabriel. Nobody saved him. On May 22, 2013, Gabriel beat Gabriel so badly that he stopped breathing. Gabriel had been tied up and mistreated all day. Gabriel hit him over and over. He beat him in the head. He beat him in the body. Gabriel begged him to stop. But Aguirre kept going. Pearl called authorities. She lied. She said Gabriel fell and hit his head on a dresser. When firefighters arrived, Gabriel was naked. He wasn't breathing. He was covered in bruises and burns. His skull was cracked. 12 of his ribs were broken. He had BB pellets embedded in his lung and groin. He was rushed to the hospital. On May 24, 2013, Gabriel passed away. He was 8 years old. Authorities arrested Aguirre and Pearl immediately. The trial began years later. Prosecutors called Aguirre pure evil. They said he deserved the death penalty. The evidence was overwhelming. Gabriel's siblings testified about the daily beatings. They described how Aguirre and Pearl laughed while they harmed him. Medical examiners showed photos of Gabriel's injuries. The jury saw what 8 months of mistreatment looked like. Broken bones, burns, bruises everywhere, malnutrition. Gabriel tried to claim he didn't mean to end Gabriel's life. He said he was just disciplining him. But the evidence said otherwise. This wasn't discipline. This was intentional and systematic mistreatment that went on for months. On November 15, 2017, the jury found Aguirre guilty of first-degree offense with special circumstances of intentional offense by mistreatment. On December 13, 2017, the same jury recommended he be sentenced to death. Pearl took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to first-degree offense and mistreatment in February 2018. She avoided the death penalty. On June 7, 2018, Judge Gerge Lomeli sentenced both of them. Pearl got life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gabriel got the death penalty. Lomeli said their conduct was horrendous, inhumane, and nothing short of evil. Gabriel was admitted to San Quentin State Prison on June 13, 2018. But in 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom placed a moratorium on the death penalty. No executions would happen in California. Gabriel's execution was put on hold indefinitely. In 2021, he was transferred to Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. He is now 44 years old. He sits on death row but will probably never be executed. He will likely die of old age in prison. Gabriel Fernandez spent 8 months being mistreated in ways most people can't imagine. He was starved. He was beaten. He was humiliated. He was made to suffer every single day. His teacher tried to save him, but the system failed. Social workers visited the house multiple times. They saw signs, but they didn't remove Gabriel. 4 social workers were charged with child neglect and falsifying records. But an appeals court dismissed the charges. Nobody was held accountable, except Aguirre and Pearl. Gabriel loved his mother. Even after everything she did to him, he still loved her. That's the kind of person he was. He had unconditional love, and they took advantage of that. Gabriel's case led to major reforms in California's child welfare system. His story became a Netflix documentary series called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. Millions of people learned his name, but Gabriel should still be alive. He should be 20 years old now. He should have graduated high school. He should have a future. Instead, he's gone because 2 people were pure evil. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was born on November 8, 1945 in Bath, New York. His father was a sergeant in the United States Army. DeAngelo seemed like a normal person. He served in the United States Navy during the Vietnam War. He became a police officer in Exeter, California in 1973. He transferred to Auburn, California in 1976. He got married. He had 3 daughters. Nobody knew that he was one of the most prolific offenders in American history. For over a decade, he terrorized California. He committed at least 120 burglaries. He harmed at least 50 women. He took the lives of 13 people. He had different nicknames depending on where he operated. The Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, the Original Night Stalker. In 2016, crime writer Michelle McNamara gave him one final name: the Golden State Killer. DeAngelo's incidents began in 1974 in Visalia. He broke into homes and stole small items, coins, jewelry, Photos. He was practicing, learning how to move through houses without being caught. On September 11, 1975, he shot and ended the life of Professor Claude Snelling in front of his daughter. He fled. In 1976, he moved to Sacramento. He started harming women who lived alone in single-family homes. He would stalk them for days. He learned their routines. He broke into their homes while they were gone and left twine. He unlocked windows. Then he would come back at night when they were sleeping. He wore a mask. He tied them up. He harmed them for hours. He ate their food. He drank their beer. He took wedding rings and other items as trophies. Later, D'Angelo started targeting couples. He would tie up the man first. He would put dishes on the man's back and say if the dishes fell, he would end both their lives. Then he would harm the woman in front of her partner, sometimes for hours. He was playing God over their lives. He had complete control. Between 1976 and 1979, D'Angelo harmed at least 51 women in Sacramento and Stockton. 2 people passed away during these incidents. On February 2, 1978, he shot and took the lives of Brian and Katie Magyar, who were walking their dog in Rancho Cordova. They were 21 and 20 years old. In late 1978, the incidents expanded to the Barre area, Concord, San Jose, Danville, Fremont, Walnut Creek. More women were harmed. Then in 1979, D'Angelo was fired from his job as a police officer in Eau Berne. He was caught shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent. After that, the incidents moved to Southern California. He started taking lives. On October 1, 1979, he broke into a home in Goleta, near Santa Barbara. He tied up a couple but had to flee when a neighbor heard screams. 3 months later, that same couple was found shot and deceased in their home. Between 1979 and 1986, D'Angelo took the lives of at least 10 people in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Orange counties. The last known incident was in 1986. 18-year-old D'Angelo Cruz was found harmed and beaten to death in her Irvine home. Then D'Angelo stopped. He went dormant. For 32 years, nobody knew who he was. In 2001, DNA testing linked the East Area Rapist incidents to the original Night Stalker offenses. They were the same person. The case went cold for decades. But in December 2017, investigators got a break. Detective Paul Holes and FBI lawyer Steve Kramer uploaded the perpetrator's DNA to GeneMatch, a genealogy website. They found distant relatives. Genealogist Barbara Ray Venter helped construct a family tree. They narrowed it down to 2 suspects. One was ruled out. D'Angelo was the main suspect. On April 18, 2018, investigators collected DNA from D'Angelo's car door handle and from tissue in his trash. On April 24, 2018, authorities arrested D'Angelo at his home in He was 72 years old. He was a retired mechanic living a normal life. Nobody suspected him. During questioning, D'Angelo muttered to himself. He said, "I did all those things. I destroyed all those lives." Investigators offered him a can of Dr. Pepper. He wouldn't touch it. They think he was worried about leaving DNA. He didn't know they already had it from his trash. The case went to trial. On June 29, 2020, D'Angelo pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree offense and 13 counts of kidnapping. He also admitted to dozens of incidents he wasn't formally charged with. The plea deal spared him the death penalty. Between August 18 and August 20, 2020, dozens of survivors and family members gave statements in court. They told stories of fear, grief, and resilience. Jean Carson Sandler, who was harmed in 1976, told the court she was frozen in fear. She said her attention wasn't on what was happening to her, but on where her son was and what D'Angelo would do to him. On August 21, 2020, Judge ordered D'Angelo to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole on each count. Multiple life sentences running consecutively. D'Angelo stood up and spoke. He said he listened to all the statements. He said he was truly sorry to everyone he hurt. But sorry doesn't bring back 13 people. Sorry doesn't heal 50 women. D'Angelo is now 79 years old. He is in a protected unit in prison. He has a job, but authorities won't say what it is. He will die behind bars. D'Angelo terrorized California for over a decade. He moved through neighborhoods like a shadow. He stole innocence, safety, and lives. Entire communities were too terrified to sleep. Families were destroyed. Survivors lived with nightmares for decades. And D'Angelo lived a normal life the whole time. He had a family. He went to work. He retired. Nobody knew. His case was solved using genealogy DNA, making him the first public arrest through genetic genealogy. Since his arrest, over 150 other cases have been solved using the same method. D'Angelo's legacy is terror. But his capture brought hope that even the coldest cases can be solved. EFREN Saldivar was born on September 30, 1969 in Brownsville, Texas. His parents were Mexican immigrants who moved to the Los Angeles area when he was 2 years old. His father was a handyman. His mother was a seamstress. EFREN seemed like a normal kid at first. He was extroverted and a decent student. But things changed in high school. He gained weight. He had trouble fitting in. His grades dropped so badly he couldn't graduate. He got a job at a supermarket where he stole things. He had no direction in life. Then he saw a friend who studied at the College of Medical and Dental Careers. EFREN liked the uniform. That's why he decided to become a respiratory therapist. Not because he cared about helping people, but because he liked how the uniform looked. In 1988, EFREN started working at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. He worked the night shift, the graveyard shift. Fewer people were around, less supervision. Within 6 months he started causing people's deaths. He used drugs like Pobalon and succinylcholine colloid. These drugs cause paralysis. They stop breathing. Respiratory therapists use them to help insert tubes during procedures. But EFREN used them to take lives. He would inject the drugs into patients' IVs, or he would decrease their oxygen intake if they were on ventilators. The patients would stop breathing. Their hearts would stop. They would pass away, and nobody suspected anything because they were elderly or already sick. It looked like natural death. EFREN later told authorities he did it because he had too many patients. He wanted to lighten his workload. When shifts were understaffed and he was overwhelmed, he would look at the board with patient names and decide who to get rid of. He said it came as easy to him as shoplifting a stick of gum. He claimed he only targeted patients who looked ready to pass away. But that was a lie. He took the lives of people who were getting better. People who were about to go home. People who had families waiting for them. He told authorities he caused death to 40 or 50 individuals. Maybe more. He said he lost count after 60. Statistical analysis suggests the number could be as high as 200. But many bodies were cremated. There's no way to know for sure. Co-workers started to notice. Rumors began circulating around the hospital about his magic syringe. In 1997, a co-worker reported him. The co-worker claimed to have seen EFREN inject something into patients' IVs, but there was no noticeable rise in deaths during his shifts. No formal investigation happened. People thought the co-worker had animosity toward EFREN. Then other respiratory therapists played a prank. They pried open his locker to hide someone's clothes inside. What they found shocked them. EFREN had a stash of drugs: morphine, succinylcholine chloride, Pobalon. Drugs respiratory therapists weren't allowed to have. They reported it immediately. On March 3, 1998, authorities questioned EFREN. He confessed. He admitted causing death to 50 individuals over 8 years. He said he did it for humanitarian reasons. He called himself an angel of death, but authorities could only hold him for 48 hours. They had no corroborating evidence. They let him go. When his confession surfaced in the press on March 25, 1998, EFREN was fired. His license was revoked. Then he went on the TV show 2020. He recanted everything. He said he lied because he was depressed and suicidal. He said he wanted the system to do what he couldn't do himself. He wanted to be sent to death row. He didn't have the courage to take his own life. But authorities didn't believe him. The investigation continued. Authorities exhumed 20 bodies of patients who passed away during EFREN's shifts. They tested for pobalon because it stays in tissues for months. 6 bodies tested positive. 5 of them never received pobalon as part of their medical treatment. The individuals affected were Eleonora Sejal Salbi Trian, who was 75, Josie Alfaro, who was 82, Luana Sidlowski was 87, Belbono Castro, who was 87, and Martul Brower, who was 84. One other person survived. Jean Coyle was 63. She had emphysema and was back at Glendale Adventist in February 1997. She annoyed a friend by pressing her call button too many times. He gave her a hot shot of succinyl-choline chloride. She lost consciousness and turned blue. But nursing staff revived her. She lived to testify against him. On January 16, 2001, EFREN was arrested again. This time authorities had evidence. On March 12, 2002, he pleaded guilty to 6 counts of first-degree offense and 1 count of attempted offense. He took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Judge Lancey sentenced him to 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. EFREN is now 55 years old. He is at the California Substance Abuse Treatment Facility and State Prison in Corcoran. He will never get out. 6 people are deceased because they went to a hospital for help. Dozens more probably passed away at his hands. EFREN Saldivar caused death because he was lazy and didn't want to do his job. He betrayed every patient who trusted him. Mikhail Markasfeev was born in Ukraine in 1978. He immigrated to the United States in 1989 when he was 11 years old. His family settled in Los Angeles, California. He seemed like a normal teenager at first, but by the time he was 18 he was deep into drugs. He used cocaine and heroin regularly. He hung out with a bad crowd. He had prior arrests for drug possession. On the night of January 16, 1997, Markasfeev was high on cocaine and heroin with 2 friends. They were at a park-and-ride lot near I-Interstate 405 in the Sepulveda Pass. They were looking for people to rob. They needed money for more drugs. Around 1 in the morning, 27-year-old Ines Cosby was driving north on Interstate 405 after visiting friends. He was on winter break from Columbia University, where he was working on his doctoral degree in special education. Ines had overcome dyslexia and wanted to help other children with learning disabilities. He was the only son of famous comedian Bill Cosby. Ines was driving his dark green Mercedes-Benz when he got a flat tire. He exited the freeway onto Skirball Center Drive. He called his girlfriend Stephanie Crane for help. She drove over and parked behind him to shine her headlights on his car so he could see while changing the tire. Markasfeev saw the expensive Mercedes from the park-and-ride lot. He walked over. He went to Stephanie's car first. He pulled out a firearm and pointed it at her through the window. She was terrified. She drove away immediately. Markasfeev then approached Ines. He demanded money, but Ines was taking too long to hand it over. Ines tried to be calm. He tried to cooperate, but Markasfeev was impatient. He was high. He was desperate. He discharged his firearm once. The bullet hit Ines in the temple. Ines fell to the ground. He passed away instantly. Markasfeev ran back toward the park-and-ride lot. Stephanie came back a minute later. She found Ines deceased on the side of the road. She called the authorities. The case became national news. Bill Cosby was one of the most famous people in America. His son's death shocked the nation. The city of Los Angeles offered a $25,000 reward. Los Angeles County offered $15,000. Tabloid newspapers The Globe and National Enquirer offered rewards too. $200,000 from The Globe. $100,000 from National Enquirer. The authorities received more than 800 tips. They created a composite sketch based on Stephanie's description. A young white man in his 20s or 30s, slender, wearing a knitted cap. A man named Christopher So came forward to claim the National Enquirer reward. He told authorities that his acquaintance Mikhail Marcusfeev confessed to the incident. So said that a few days after Ines passed away, he went with Marcusfeev and another friend to search for the weapon in a wooded area. Marcusfeev admitted he discharged a firearm at a black man. They didn't find the weapon that day, but authorities searched the same area. They found a .38 caliber firearm wrapped in a knit cap. The cap matched Stephanie's description. On March 14, 1997, prosecutors filed charges. Marcusfeev was arrested. While in prison awaiting trial, he wrote letters to another inmate. In those letters he confessed to causing Ines's death. The trial began in June 1998. The prosecution presented DNA evidence. A single hair found in the knit cap matched Marcusfeev. The weapon was linked to him. So testified about the confession. The letters from prison were entered as evidence. The defense argued the lineup was rigged. They said witnesses made up stories to get reward money from tabloids. They suggested someone else did it. On July 7, 1998, after deliberating, the jury found Marcusfeev guilty of first-degree offense with special circumstances. He was convicted of attempted robbery. The special circumstances meant he was eligible for the death penalty. But prosecutors decided not to seek it. On April 6, 1999, Marcusfeev was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole plus 10 years. In February 2001, Marcusfeev wrote a letter to California's Deputy Attorney General. He confessed again. He said he wanted to abandon his appeal because it was based on falsehood and deceit. He said he was guilty. He said he wanted to do the right thing. He wrote that he wanted to apologize to the Cosby family. He said it was his duty as a Christian. He said it was the least he could do after the great wickedness he was responsible for. Marcusfeev is now 46 years old. He is at California's state prison Corcoran. He will never get out. Ines Cosby stopped to change a flat tire. He was helping himself so he could continue his journey. Marcusfeev took his life for money he never even got. Ines was working toward a doctorate. He wanted to help children. He had his whole life ahead of him. He passed away because an 18-year-old was high and impatient. George Wayne Smith was born in 1951 in California. He served 2 years in the United States Army as an artilleryman. He was stationed in West Germany, where he worked with tactical nuclear weapons. After his military service, he came back to California and worked as a maintenance man in Cyprus. He seemed like a normal guy. But in the late 1970s, everything changed. He underwent a born-again Christian conversion. He became obsessed with the end of the world. He believed society was about to collapse. He thought nuclear war was coming. He thought biblical Armageddon was near. He was influenced by the cultural anxieties of the 1970s, economic downturns, oil crises, Cold War tensions. Asif became a survivalist. He wanted to prepare for the end times. He wanted to build a fortified retreat in the San Bernardino Mountains, where he and his followers could stockpile supplies and weapons. But he needed money. A lot of money. So he decided to rob a bank. Asif recruited 4 men to help him. Christopher Gregory Harvin was 30 years old. He worked with Seth as a maintenance man. ASEF exposed him to his anarchist ideas about overthrowing the government. Christopher's younger brother Russell Harvin was 26. He lived with his parents in Anaheim. He was a father and needed money for child support. Then there were brothers Belisario Delgado, who was 17, and his older brother Manuel Delgado, who was 21. Manuel lived in Garden Grove and needed money for his second child. Belisario was just a truant teenager with no fixed address. None of the five had serious prior offenses beyond minor drug charges. This would be their first and last major incident. ASEF Myth planned everything at his house at 10314 50th Street in Mira Loma. He told authorities later that the plan was all his. He cased the bank, he made the bombs. He told everyone what to do. About a week and a half before the robbery, Smith visited the Security Pacific Bank in Norco and memorized the layout. He wanted to get in and out in 2 minutes. Meanwhile, the men built an arsenal. Shotguns, pistols, thousands of rounds of ammunition, 9 Armalite rifles, HK-91, HK-93, AR-15. They even had a katana sword. Smith worked in his garage making grenades and incendiary bombs. He built an improvised explosive device designed to divert police away from the bank. The bomb was supposed to go off under a gas main about a block away right when they were robbing the bank. On May 9, 1980, at 3:40 in the afternoon, everything went wrong. The gang carjacked a green van in Brea and took the driver hostage. They wore military fatigue jackets and masks. They planted the IED under the gas main with a candle timer. But an observant Norco resident saw the burning candle and reported it to the fire department. The bomb never went off. At 3:40, 4 of the men stormed into the Security Pacific Bank at 4th Street and Hammer Avenue in Norco. They forced tellers to hand over $20,000 in cash. But an employee at a different bank across the street spotted them and called authorities. Riverside County Sheriff's Deputy Glenn Bolaski was sitting at a red light across from the bank when he got the call. He pulled up just as the robbers were coming out. One of the robbers outside radioed the others. "We've been spotted. Let's go. Let's go." The robbers opened fire on Bolaski's police cruiser. They blew out his windshield. Bolaski threw his vehicle into reverse and crashed into another car. The perpetrators discharged hundreds of rounds from their high-powered rifles. Bolaski returned fire, but he was outgunned. 2 other deputies arrived. They had only .38 caliber revolvers and 12-gauge shotguns. The robbers had military-grade assault rifles. One suspect, Belisario Delgado, was hit and passed away at the scene. The others jumped into the getaway van and fled. What followed was a 25-mile chase through Riverside County and into San Bernardino County. The perpetrators fired at every patrol car that got close. They fired at a sheriff's helicopter and brought it down. Deputy James Benjamin Evans was ambushed and taken from life during the chase near Lultle Creek. The suspects stopped their car and opened fire when Evans rounded a corner. He was 39 years old. He didn't stand a chance. The chase ended when the robbers crashed their yellow Pontiac Trans Am. They fled on foot into the hilly terrain near Lake Mathews. Smith was severely wounded. He was apprehended around 7 in the evening. Christopher and Russell Harvin were captured the next day on May 11. Manuel Delgado vowed not to be taken alive. On May 11, he was confronted by a 65-man Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department SWAT team. He was hit 4 times and passed away. In total, 33 police vehicles were damaged or destroyed. A helicopter was shot down. 8 officers were wounded. 1 deputy was deceased. 2 perpetrators were deceased. It was one of the most violent incidents in American history. The trial began and lasted months. It was one of the longest and most expensive trials in American history. On September 23, 1982, Judge Robert Duane sentenced Smith, Christopher Harvin, and Russell Harvin to life in prison without the possibility of parole. They were convicted of 46 felonies. First-degree offense under the felony offense rule for the death of Deputy Evans. Multiple counts of attempted offense. Assault with a deadly weapon. Armed robbery. Kidnapping. Use of explosives. The 3 men are still behind bars. Smith is at California State Prison Corcoran. He gave his first recorded interview in 2021 from prison. He is now 73 years old. He will die behind bars. The Norco shootout changed policing forever. The San Bernardino Sheriff's Department immediately purchased automatic firearms and even an M60 machine gun for their helicopter. Other departments followed. In 1997, President Bill Clinton created the 1033 program, which enabled the Department of Defense to send military-grade equipment to police forces across the country. The Norco incident is still used today to train law enforcement in anti-terrorism and survival tactics. Smith wanted money to prepare for the apocalypse. Instead, he created his own apocalypse on the streets of Norco. Deputy James Evans paid with his life. 8 other officers were wounded. 2 young men were taken from life, all because Smith believed the world was ending and needed money for his survivalist fantasy. Bin Tay Look was born in Vietnam in 1973. He came to the United States as a refugee. He settled in San Francisco, California. He had a long history of violence. In 1991, when he was 18, he was convicted of aggravated assault and domestic violence in Texas. He served time. In 1996, he was convicted of another assault in California. He served more time. Authorities tried to deport him back to Vietnam multiple times, but Vietnam wouldn't take him back. So he stayed in the United States. He lived in San Francisco. He worked odd jobs. He gambled. He had a problem with gambling. He owed people money. He was desperate. On March 23, 2012, that desperation turned into something horrific. The Lei family lived at 16 House Street in the Angeles neighborhood of San Francisco. It was a quiet residential area. Yin Lei was 37 years old. Her husband Ching Lei was 43. They had 2 sons, 11-year-old Anthony and 5-year-old Wayne. Yin's older sister Vince Lei was 65. She lived with the family. They were hard-working immigrants. They owned a small business. They were living the American dream. But on that Friday morning, their dream became a nightmare. Bin Tay Look knew the family. He had done some work for them. He knew they kept cash in the house. He knew they were trusting people. Early in the morning on March 23, 2012, Lei went to the house. He brought a weapon with him. Authorities believe he went there to rob them. But something went terribly wrong. What happened inside that house was pure evil. Mook attacked the entire family. He used a blunt object. He beat them. He stabbed them. He showed no mercy, not even to the children. Lei was found in the master bedroom. She had been beaten and stabbed multiple times. Her older sister Vince was found in another bedroom. She had been beaten so badly her skull was fractured. Dimuka Ting Lei was found near his wife. He had defensive wounds on his hands. He tried to fight back. He tried to protect his family. But Look was too strong. 11-year-old Anthony was found in his bedroom. He had been beaten and stabbed. 5-year-old Wayne was the worst. He was found in his room. He was so small, so innocent. Look beat him and stabbed him repeatedly. A 5-year-old child. All 5 members of the family were deceased. The house was covered in blood. It was one of the most brutal scenes investigators had ever witnessed. A family member found the bodies later that morning, around 10. They called the authorities immediately. San Francisco Police Department responded. Homicide detectives took over the case. They processed the scene for hours. They found evidence, DNA evidence, fingerprints, a shoe print, blood spatter patterns. The evidence pointed to one person, Bin Tay Look. His DNA was at the scene. His fingerprints were on items in the house. A bloody shoe print matched his shoes. On March 24, 2012, less than 24 hours after the incident, authorities arrested Look at a friend's house in San Francisco. He didn't resist. He was calm. Too calm. The trial began years later. Look pleaded not guilty. His defense attorneys argued the evidence was circumstantial. They said Luke had been to the house before, for work, so his DNA and fingerprints didn't prove anything. They said someone else did it. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the DNA, the fingerprints, the shoe print, testimony from forensic experts. They showed the jury crime scene photos. The jury saw what Luke did to that family. They saw the brutality. They saw the small bodies of those two little boys. On February 6, 2017, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Luke guilty on all counts. 5 counts of first-degree offense with special circumstances, multiple offenses, offense during a robbery, offense during a burglary. The special circumstances made him eligible for the death penalty. But in 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a moratorium on the death penalty. He placed a hold on all executions in California. On March 5, 2019, Judge Samuel Feng formally sentenced Luke to death, but with the moratorium in place, Luke will likely spend the rest of his life on death row without ever being executed. Luke is now 51 years old. He is at San Quentin State Prison on death row. He maintains his innocence, but the evidence says otherwise. He took 5 lives that morning. An entire family wiped out. Yin and Ching Li came to America for a better life. They worked hard. They raised their children. They took care of Yin's older sister. They were good people. 11-year-old Anthony loved basketball. He was a good student. He had his whole life ahead of him. 5-year-old Wayne was just starting kindergarten. He loved dinosaurs. He loved his family. Vince Lei was a grandmother figure. She helped raise the boys. She was kind and gentle. All 5 of them passed away because Luke needed money. He took their lives for whatever cash they had in the house. He showed no mercy, not even to the children. The INGLZ neighborhood was shaken. People couldn't believe something so horrific happened in their quiet community. The Lei family's funeral was attended by hundreds of people. The 2 small coffins for Anthony and Wen broke everyone's hearts. The case remains one of the most brutal incidents in San Francisco history. 5 innocent people, an entire family, gone because of one man's greed and violence.